and where we're looking to collaborate with folks through funding from google.org. So JFF overall is looking to build a more robust and inclusive digital jobs ecosystem and has received support from google.org to really develop and scale strategies to support on-ramps to high quality technology jobs, especially for individuals who are currently underrepresented in this sector. And our grant hones in specifically on women, people from Indigenous backgrounds, Black workers, Latinx workers, and those from other backgrounds that are underrepresented in technology. So we have right now 3 primary areas of work that are underway. We are first looking to, through some research and a separate grant from Google, we are looking to identify opportunities and gaps related to the digital jobs ecosystem and understand what's working for whom and in what particular context, especially as it relates to the credentialing landscape and the specific trainings and pathways that help folks move into high quality roles. We're supporting both systems and design for a number of planning sites that have received planning grants to go through a really robust process so that they can understand their own regional jobs pathways and where there may be opportunities to align those more clearly with their local labor market and to build pathways for folks who are from those underrepresented populations. And then finally, some of you may be familiar with some of the work that JFF has done to support nonprofits in scaling the suite of Google Career Certificates across the nonprofit landscape, and we are through a grant from Google working to distribute around 15,000 licenses to nonprofits across the country and to provide support to them in their implementation of the Google Career Certificates. With that, we can shift over to the next slide. So this just captures some of the strategies and approaches that we're using as we, JFF, work to build a more robust and inclusive digital jobs ecosystem. This kind of spans a range of projects and initiatives and speaks to several of the specific strategies that we're trying to use as we endeavor to make technology more equitable and ensure that folks from a range of backgrounds are able to access those high quality careers. So we're working to build connections across the field, especially to connect some of the learnings that have come both from JFF and the work that we've done through a number of our both planning grant sites that I mentioned just a moment ago, as well as some more implementation focused work. We're broadly at JFF, as Shanir mentioned in her discussion of our mission, really committed to advancing equity and understanding in this context what it looks like to build more equitable opportunities and outcomes within the tech ecosystem. We're in that third bucket, also working to develop a series of publications and learnings for the field that can contribute to our broad-based knowledge about what's working across different areas of the tech ecosystem and how we as an organization can help support some of the most effective on-ramps and how we can contribute both to within our work with Google and to the broader field around understanding what's working and for whom and in what circumstances. Next slide. So the work that we are sharing with you all today and the 3 opportunities that we'll highlight over the course of today's conversation are part of a broader suite of work that we have with the Google team and also part of a pretty robust portfolio focused on digital job sector strategies within JFF. And we wanted to start by just sharing a little bit about the kind of evolution of JFF's work with Google and how we got to some of the key opportunities that we'll be showcasing today. So back when Google launched their first career certificate, the Google IT Support Professional Certificate in 2018, they came to JFF to support the scaling of that credential within both the nonprofit and community college landscapes. So we worked in close collaboration with the Google team to scale that certificate over the course of several years to about 100 and 7 community colleges in 20 states and 35 domestic and international nonprofits. And that was really one of the first major rounds of work with the Google team and one of our first opportunities to really understand and examine some of the roles that such employer-driven credentials can play within this space, and to think about how we could support the rollout and implementation of these new credentials within the college and nonprofit context. Over the last several years, our work with Google has continued to grow, and we are now with the launch of the 4 new career certificates in 2021, we're now working with a new round of community colleges and nonprofits to scale that expanded suite of certificates across the landscape. And so one of the opportunities that we'll be focusing on today is around access to those career certificates that we have through a grant from google.org. And in addition, as this timeline shows in 2022, we've also really broadened our work with Google to include regional focused work that enables local communities to build robust digital job strategies in collaboration with and with support from JFF. So I briefly mentioned some of the planning grant work that we have for sites that is already underway. And we're extremely excited today to launch and to discuss with you all a new round of planning grants that will be issued to public sector organizations to examine their own digital jobs pathways within their respective agencies and to understand how we can support digital job strategies within the public sector. So we have a very exciting planning grant that is coming out of that round of support from Google, and then are also launching an effort to broadly expand public sector digital job pathways in close collaboration with Newprofit and Google by expanding the use and implementation of employer-driven credentials like the Google Career Certificate Suite and IBM Skill Build certificates within workforce boards specifically. And with that, I will pass it over to Shanir to lead the next portion of our discussion.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Sarah. So Sarah mentioned I'm going to be sharing some information today specifically about the public sector planning grant. We're really excited about this opportunity. So with this initiative, public sector entities will test a new approach to building more robust and inclusive on-ramps to digital jobs and support alignment with local stakeholders such as nonprofit partners and training providers. This initiative, we hope will invest in this initiative is scheduled to invest in 3 public sector agencies or entities, and what they will do is design and plan a digital job strategy that connects low-income job seekers to high-demand careers within the public sector, especially with an emphasis on underrepresented populations. And for the purpose of this RFP, the public sector is defined as being a segment of the economy that's comprised of employment positions at the federal, state, and/or local government agency level. What's really unique about this opportunity is we're working in real time to build a strategy for the future of work. Over the past 2 years with the pandemic, many of us saw firsthand the need for critical updates to government systems and the rapidly expanding role of technology across many of these agencies. The work of this planning grant aims to not only establish high quality career paths, but also works to close the skills gap for tech roles in the public sector. This opportunity is available for 3 public sector entities, and each planning grant will be awarded at $50,000 with the activities taking place over the course of 6 months. In terms of the scope of work, applicants who are interested in submitting a proposal to this opportunity should be able to demonstrate a clear approach to building career pathways into public sector digital jobs. Each applicant's approach should focus on the following: being able to assess digital job and skill demand, as well as opportunities for work-based learning experiences and employment within public sector agencies that are identified in your application. Also able to conduct research to understand first how federal, state, and/or local government agencies can support these career pathways, as well as offer specific recommendations and considerations for building a more robust ecosystem in the sector. Also, being able to identify opportunities that leverage these short-term and industry-recognized credentials, so such as the Google Career Certificates, and also really important, not only being able to map what works, but also being able to outline potential barriers and challenges within the public sector for creating these career pathways. So examples to consider may include formal promotion processes, fiscal constraints, government salary freezes, as well as collective bargaining and union regulations for employees and employers. Also to consider developing targeted recruitment strategies that aim to increase the number of Black, Indigenous, Latinx women, LGBTQIA, as well as other populations that are currently underrepresented across the tech industry. And lastly, also being able to identify essential wraparound supports and community partners who can assist in these services, but also promote participant success and across the entire timeline. So that means enrollment, job placement, as well as ongoing retention. How does all of this translate into actual deliverables? So once this grant is awarded, grantees will be expected to complete the following activities across a 6-month period. So first, identifying a hypothesis to support inclusive on-ramps to digital jobs focused specifically in the public sector. Then, of course, conducting a needs assessment. You want to validate your hypothesis and map current programs and credentials focused on digital jobs that are aligned with public sector demand. Next, being able to develop a strategy and timeline for these localized career pathways that support entry into these public sector jobs. And then next, being able to identify public sector employer champions who can help support and advance this work. So depending on your agency or your organization, what does this look like for you? Perhaps it's talent acquisition, it could be learning development, or even DEI groups in your agency who are advancing this work. Also, being able to examine the ecosystem of support available to participants in this digital job training program and any gaps that may exist in supportive servicing service offerings. So what's currently missing for success and what can we suggest or what can we showcase to solve for these gaps? And lastly, being able to examine the need and opportunities for new work-based learning experiences and other short-term training programs in order to meet local demand and be able to incorporate these findings into your larger digital job strategy. So all of this, what does this look like in terms of time commitment? Of course, all of these deliverables will be supported by JFF staff who are available to assist with working through and completing each of these. Organizations who apply to this opportunity are expected to spend at least 5 hours per week on grant-related activities. At each selected organization, there should be someone who can exclusively serve as a project manager who's shepherding this work or at least serving as a point of contact. In addition, for the grant-related activities, these will include, of course, completing the deliverables that I just mentioned, as well as participating in monthly coaching and technical assistance discussions with JFF staff to assess the progress of your planning activities, areas of concern, questions, and providing additional insight and working through any challenges that may arise. I also wanted to highlight the rubric as a reference for our applicants on page 13 of the RFP document, Appendix A. This scoring criteria I just want to call out. It details the way in which the applications will be reviewed. I encourage all applicants to take a closer look as each section on the rubric details the key points to be scored, as well as highlights in blue the corresponding sections of the application that will be graded. And just a couple of dates to remind everybody of. If you are planning to apply to this opportunity, please complete the interest form by tomorrow, May 27th. If you have any additional questions and would like to speak directly to a JFF staff member, we're also hosting office hours on June 6th and June 7th. Where you can meet one-on-one with somebody to answer any additional questions. And then, of course, the deadline to submit your application is June 10th. In terms of contact, if you have a question, feel free to get in touch with Brittany. Her email is available here. This deck will also be shared, but also please continue to drop any questions that you want to have us answer while we're here today in the Easy Retro board, and the link is shared in the chat. But I will now hand it over to Veronica.
Thanks, Shanair. Hello, everyone. I'm Veronica Buckwalter. I'm an Associate Director here at JFF. And I am the day-to-day project director of this piece of the Digital Jobs Initiative here, leading the Workforce Development Board Digital Skills Pilot Initiative. So just to give you a quick overview of this opportunity is exclusive to workforce development boards. You must be a representative of a workforce development board in order to apply. Consortia of boards are also welcome and encouraged to apply. This opportunity is being offered in partnership with both New Profit and Google and IBM. And it is focused on implementation, as Sarah pointed out. There's the planning grant, which focuses more on building out a digital jobs strategy, whereas this pilot is more focused on implementation of technology solutions. The pilot offers the opportunity to deploy either the Google Career certificates, the suite of certificates, or you can deploy the IBM Skills Build learning platform. And I'll talk a little bit more about those as we move along here. But, this is really an opportunity for workforce boards that have a good awareness of the IT landscape in their region. They have a good understanding of where job opportunities lie for the tech sector across different industries within their region. Maybe you have Google licenses already and are looking for some capacity funding to help you deploy those or build capacity around offering learner supports. This is certainly a good opportunity for you to do that. This is really for regions that have sort of already gone through that planning grant process and have a good sense of the partnerships and the capabilities and the supports that they'll need to successfully deploy a digital training solution. Any workforce board is eligible to apply from any region. This is a relatively small pilot. We're anticipating making no more than between 8 to 10 awards across both technology solutions. There is the ability to deploy both solutions. If that is something that your region is interested in, you can select one or the other, or you can choose to pilot both. The pilot overall will last about 15 months. There'll be a 2 to 3 month planning period early on in the project where you'll work closely with JFF to think through what your pilot will look like in terms of design and implementation and partnerships, as well as a data collection and sharing strategy. And then on the later part of the pilot, there'll be about a 3-month period built in at the end for trying to gather outcomes data, whether that be whether individuals have landed a job placement or if they intend to or have already moved on to advanced education at a local post-secondary institution. The award amount for this opportunity varies based on the solution that you choose to implement and whether you're only selecting to do one solution or you're attempting to pilot both. So we are just asking that you provide us with a budget as part of your application. And if you're selected as one of our final candidates, most likely we will contact you to talk through what your final budget could potentially look like based on the total pool of funding that we have available. We can go ahead to the next slide, Brittany. So here's just a quick overview of the suite of Google certificates that are being made available as part of this opportunity. There's 6 different opportunities here. A lot of you may be most familiar with the Google IT Support Professional certificate that was heavily implemented through community colleges and nonprofits, as Sarah talked a little bit about earlier. Some of these other certificates are quite newer and may not have the degree of awareness within local regions as the IT Support Professional certificate. But just so you're aware, the opportunity would make all 6 of these certificates available to you to pilot based on what you're seeing in the labor market, interest from job seekers that are coming through your door. They would be able to enter any 6 of these learning paths. Go ahead to the next slide, Brittany. And this is just a quick overview of the IBM Skills Build platform, which is not necessarily built around specific certificates. There's a couple of different learning opportunities for job seekers on Skills Build. There are individual badges that are available. And then there's also the opportunity to sort of cluster badges together toward a certificate program. There are learning pathways around specific technical skills. So there's AI, there's cloud computing, there's blockchain, cybersecurity, data science. But then there are also some more general workplace skills that learners may find beneficial, badges that deal with, agile development, design thinking, mindfulness, job readiness skills, professional skills. So there's quite a variety of different types of modules on the skills build, but it is designed a little bit differently than the Google Career Certificate or certificates. So there will be some informational sessions held next week. There's one being held by Google and one being held by IBM for you to learn more about each of these tech solutions. The details for logging onto those info sessions is available on the Public Sector Digital Skills website. I put the link in the chat a few minutes ago. The dial-in information, it's not on there just yet. I have the information, I just need to update it on the website. Just check back within the next day or two, and dial-in information for those information sessions should be on there. I believe the IBM session is being held on the June 1st, and then the Google session is being held on June 2nd, and I think they're both at 11 a.m. Eastern time. So if you'd like to learn more about either of these tech solutions, please feel free to jump on those information sessions. Like I said, they're being hosted directly by Google and IBM, so you'll have representatives directly from these platforms to walk you through the programs, answer any technical questions that you might have, questions around the type of support they may be able to lend you as part of the pilot. So just come prepared with any questions that you have, and I'm sure they'll be happy to answer those. We can go ahead to the next slide, Brittany. So in terms of deliverables that we're looking at for this pilot, like I said, you will be working closely with JFF in the first couple of months to really think through what your pilot implementation plan will look like and think about some specific KPIs. We intentionally keep the language for KPIs a little bit flexible in the RFP because we understand the contextual differences that exist in regions. And we want to make sure that you're striving toward target numbers and KPIs that accurately reflect what's happening in your regional labor market and some of the dynamics that are at play there. So while we give you a sense of the KPIs that we would like you to target, really those target numbers will be developed as part of that pilot planning phase early on in the project. A recruitment strategy targeting priority populations. Both Sarah and Shanair talked a little bit about the commitment to ensure that these learning opportunities are being made available to populations that are typically underrepresented in the tech sector. This opportunity is no different. The RFP does require applicants to demonstrate a really well thought out strategy around recruiting individuals that are typically not as well represented in the tech sector. So we'll be working closely with all of the applicants to think through what that looks like in terms of partnerships and timelines, and making sure that to the extent possible, you're trying to recruit individuals that are being targeted as part of this opportunity. ETPL approval and WIOA enrollment. Obviously, we would love for these programs to be added to your regional ETPL list so that they are eligible for WIOA training reimbursements. We want folks, to the extent possible, to be co-enrolled in WIOA so that they are eligible to receive the supportive services that come with being a WIOA enrollee. Because of the very wide open criteria around being eligible for this opportunity, we understand that there may be a lot of folks that aren't WIOA eligible, and that's okay too. But to the extent possible, we would love to see participants co-enrolled in WIOA, like I said, simply so that they have access to some of those additional job seeker and learner supports that are available through WIOA. Engage in technical support and feedback discussions. This is a pilot project, so we are looking to get a lot of information around how the implementation process is going and lessons learned and things you would do differently. So that will require you to engage with the JFF New Profit and our evaluation team on occasion. I don't anticipate that this will be a very heavy lift. But we will be talking with you consistently throughout the pilot project just to get some insights from you on how things are going, what may not be going so well, things that you need support or need us to try to answer for you. You know, we expect strong participation from your team in those engagements. And finally, data collection, reporting, and evaluation. I talked a little bit about the requirement around developing some targeted KPIs. You will be expected to do some data collection and reporting to our evaluation team as part of the pilot. You can go ahead and move on. So just some dates to keep in mind. The interest form is due by the end of the day tomorrow. I talked a little bit about the information sessions that are being hosted by IBM and Google next week. Deadline to submit applications is just before midnight Pacific time on June 15th. Jonathan's email address is there. He is our project manager and is handling a lot of the day-to-day logistical activities of this project. Jonathan can answer any questions that you have around completing or submitting your application. He's more than happy to work with you to answer any questions that you might have. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it back over to Shanair to give us a few more details in case there's any lingering confusion around the difference between these two opportunities. We'll talk about some of the specific differences.
Perfect. Thanks, Veronica. So to name it right off the top, how are these opportunities different? The public sector planning grant is just that. It's a planning grant. It focuses only on exploring and building a digital job strategy. There's no implementation available currently for this opportunity, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there won't be implementation available in the future. But at the moment, this is exclusively a planning opportunity or a planning grant. In terms of eligibility, this opportunities open for public sector agencies and entities, so federal, state, local government agencies. So it could be state universities, Department of Education, government offices, all of that would be eligible. And again, the time commitment to keep in mind, at least 5 hours a week should be available to commit to this project over the span of 6 months. And $50,000 will be awarded to each of the 3 selected applicants. And I'll turn it back to Veronica, who will talk about the Workforce Development Board pilot.
Thanks. Okay, so yes, so again, this is an implementation grant, and I saw that a question came in around, you know, if you're applying for the Workforce Board Digital Skills Pilot Initiative, should you refrain from applying for the license distribution? Yes, the licenses for the Workforce Board pilot will be coming out of a different pot of licenses than the Google Career Certificate License distribution. So you don't need to apply for both. Any licenses that you're requiring through the Workforce Board pilot will be provided by New Profit. So yeah, just remember that you don't need to apply for both opportunities. I think probably the biggest difference here is that the Workforce Board Digital Skills Pilot is recruiting, we're recruiting learners. We will have training participants. We will have training completers. We will have training data that we're collecting as part of this project. Eligibility, only workforce development boards are eligible for this opportunity. Workforce development boards are eligible for either opportunity. They are a public sector organization, therefore they are eligible for either opportunity, but for the Workforce Board Digital Skills Pilot, only workforce boards are eligible to apply, or consortia of boards are encouraged also. Time commitment, this will vary based on the solution being implemented and whether you're implementing one solution or both. There is a larger amount of capacity funding available for the Google Career Certs. So there will be a bit more of a time commitment in terms of both the feedback loop that you'll have with JFF and the data collection process. I don't anticipate the time commitment from either solution being, extremely time consuming. But just note that there will be more of a time commitment required if you choose to implement the Google certs versus IBM's Skills Build. And again, funding will vary as well. The funding for each Skills Build implementer is set at $45,000. If that's what you're choosing to implement, your budget should be no more than $45,000 when you submit an application. The budget for the Google Career Certs is a little bit more flexible, but may not exceed $150,000. Those that are seeking $150,000, there is an expectation that you will have a pretty substantial scope and scale for your project. Like I said, we kind of put a note in there in the RFP around doing some negotiating with boards around their budget for the Google Career Certs. But just keep in mind that there is a pretty high expectation for boards that do go for that full 150,000. So we'll kind of be making determinations for those budgets as we go along and we see how many applicants we get. Same for boards that are choosing to implement both solutions. If you're choosing to implement both solutions, I think we put in there not to exceed a budget of $165,000. But again, we'll kind of be taking a look at the number of applicants we get and the geographic diversity of the applicants we get, and trying to work with boards around ensuring that you have a reasonable budget for what you're trying to do in your region if you're selected as a final applicant. All right, so with that, I think I might be turning it over to Brittany at this point.
Thanks so much, Veronica. Yes, so before we get into Q&A, I'll just cover some next steps and upcoming dates, and then we'll leave plenty of time to get to questions. So as folks have already mentioned, tomorrow's our deadline to express interest in either of these opportunities. We also have the info sessions and office hours coming up, so you can learn more about each of those tech solutions. And if you have any questions specifically around the public sector grant, we'll have office hours for those coming up. And we'll share the link to register for those office hours to everybody who completes the interest form. So just look out for an email from the team there. And of course, we have our application deadlines, June 10th for the public sector planning grant and June 15th for the Workforce Development Board's Skills Pilot Initiative. And we'll be announcing our selected organizations in July of this year. So very, very soon. And I just want to remind folks, we have our Easy Retro board here filling up with questions. I'm going to drop the link in the chat one more time for folks to put their questions in. We have plenty of time dedicated to answering questions and would be happy to answer any and all questions that come to mind today. And the team is also available via email if there are questions that come up after our session together.
Brittany, I can go ahead and answer. I know we're going to move to the questions that are in the Easy Retro, but I see one that came in the chat here that I can answer really quickly. Eligibility requirements for participants in the Workforce Board pilot. Really, the only eligibility requirement that we have is that the individual be over the age of 18. That's why I said that you may likely have a lot of individuals that are eligible for the opportunity that may not be WIOA eligible, and that's okay. We just, to the extent possible, we would like to see workforce boards targeting individuals that are WIOA eligible and co-enrolling them in WIOA when possible. But it is not a requirement that individuals be WIOA eligible. Really, the only eligibility requirement they have is that they be over the age of 18. And for the budget, I'm not sure, Brandon, if this is a question for any specific opportunity. We do ask for indirect costs as part of the budget for the workforce board budget, but we don't require a budget narrative really for the workforce board pilot. We just require funding amounts for each of the cost categories, but there is a cost category for indirect costs there. Let's see. Your cost share match for grantees for the planning grant. I'll hand that over to you, Shanair.
Yeah, sure. I don't think that, so grantees can use the grant to cover both direct and indirect costs, but regarding the cost share, we're happy to check with our fiscal department and reach back out to you directly.
Brandon also had a question here. Are there obligations after the planning grant is completed?
Yeah, no, so we'll work across the 6 months to work on those deliverables. And then after we complete the planning grant, I think that the grantees will be better positioned to explore funding on their own for additional opportunities for implementation, or if at that time there's implementation that we have, that's a conversation I think that we can all approach at that point.
Okay. Let's see. There's a question in here. Is the license distribution opportunity only open to public entities? I'm assuming yes, because this is the public sector digital skills opportunity. But Sarah, if you could confirm, that would be helpful.
There's actually, JFF has a fair amount of flexibility with our overall license distribution. So we're happy to have a follow-up conversation if you'd like to share more about your particular context, but we're actually in the process of supporting license distribution to through the project that Veronica is focusing on, through workforce boards, and then through separate streams of work to both the community college and nonprofit context. So we do have some additional kind of means of supporting organizations that are just looking for licenses and are happy to talk through any particular circumstances, or if you'd like to talk through kind of eligibility for your organization. There's quite a bit of flexibility, but we're happy to discuss if that would be helpful.
Guess we can move into the easy retro. I don't see it unless I missed any questions. Please let me know. I think I got everything here in the chat. All right. Shanair, do you want to take that first one for the planning grant then?
Yeah, sure. So the question regarding much of the workforce work in Cleveland done by nonprofits. So although this opportunity is for public sector, and that would be the lead applicant on the project, there's also an opportunity for you to partner with a public sector agency and be able to present your application in that way, serving as a community partner or a potential stakeholder. So that may be an option to consider. Sarah, I don't know if you also have anything additional to add?
Yeah, I can just chime in briefly and note that like one of our overarching goals with this work is to understand public sector digital job pathways and what's working to support individuals in accessing those specific opportunities. And it's an area where JFF has actually not done very much work to date. And so we wanted to hone in on public sector entities specifically, as opposed to some of the other, types of organizations mentioned within that question. But we're happy to, as Shanair mentioned, think about together with you all or folks who might be putting an application together, if there's a consortium or group of organizations within your locale that are applying together, as long as the grant flows through the public entity, that's fine, and we're open to that option as well.
Right. I guess we can move to some of the workforce board digital skills questions. Are these certificate programs in person, remote, or hybrid? So both programs, the Google Certs and IBM Skills Build, can be completed completely virtually, 100% online. That being said, there was some implementation happening through the community college initiative where there was on-site lab space being made available to cohorts of learners. There's a couple of different structures that you can build into your pilot. And that's why I said we have kind of that pilot design planning period early on. We're encouraging partnership with, your post-secondary institutions, community-based organizations and NPOs, to think through what makes the most sense in terms of providing supports to your learners. Do you want to build in, any peer-to-peer connections where you would bring learners together to sort of build a cohort model? So while they can be done, completed completely asynchronously by learners, there's also the ability to design a pilot where learners are coming together. And that will be up to the workforce board to think through how they want to approach that. I think I answered the second one already. Are there certification tests for both the Google and IBM certificates? If so, does the grant cover the test costs? Okay. No. So there's no costs associated. I think there's a question further down here too about costs associated with accessing. There's no cost associated with accessing either program. They're being offered completely free of charge to the learner. When I said, getting folks enrolled through WIOA, that's really just to give them access to the learner supports that are made available through WIOA and making them a WIOA eligible a learner. However, the curriculum for, correct me if I'm wrong here, Sarah, some of the curriculum for Google IT prepares learners to be able to sit for additional certifications that may have a cost, but the certifications or the certificates earned through Google, there's no cost associated, correct?
That's correct. There's no cost associated, and they're certificates, not certification. So even though there are some graded activities that participants need to pass in order to get the certificate, there's no like formal certification test like one would sit for example, in the CompTIA A+ certification, for example.
Right. Okay. I think I answered the next one. Moving down, do IBM badges lead to industry recognized credentials? So some do. It depends on the sort of learner path that the individual chooses. I believe there's a Fortinet network security certification available through Skills Build. That is an industry recognized certification. I believe there's a Red Hat certification that's available on Skills Build. Those are the two that come to mind right off the bat. So it sort of depends on what the learner is interested in, whether there's an industry recognized certification on Skills Build available for it. But not all of the learning on Skills Build leads to an industry recognized credential. Let's see, can Google certificates or IBM Skills Build integrate with existing learning management systems? Do they have to be accessed through Google or IBM portal? Was Google working on this as part of the community college initiative, Sarah, integrating it into the community college LMS?
Yes. So the Google Career Certificates are offered online via Coursera, and they are able to do integration through about 4 different learning management systems now. I think some of the smaller LMSs do not enable Coursera integration, but they do work with most of the large and most common LMS systems.
Yeah, and as far as I know, IBM cannot. I think they are working on toward this, but as of right now, I don't believe Skills Build can be integrated. Moving on, is this connected to the partnership between Knob and Google? So sort of, not directly, not directly connected to the Grow with Google initiative where licenses were being distributed through NAWB. However, if you have licenses that you received through NAWB and Grow with Google, and you want to apply for the Digital Skills Pilot Initiative to receive capacity money to help implement those licenses, you can do that. You don't have to be requesting a new set of licenses as part of the Workforce Board pilot. If you have an existing set of licenses that you received through NAWB and you're just, having trouble with getting capacity funds around, recruitment or marketing or learner supports, you can make a note in your application that you do have existing licenses. And you can utilize those as part of the pilot, and just make a case for using the capacity funding to help with successful implementation of those licenses. Let's see, is license distribution opportunity? Well, we answered that one. Recording will be available. I'm pretty sure, Brittany, this will be posted to the website, right? That web page.
Yes, we'll make it available afterwards for all registrants, and then it will be posted on the website as well.
Perfect. We just recently granted RFP from our local workforce board. Will that allow us to apply for the Google Career License Distribution? I guess it depends on whether you're the person asking this question, whether your organization is a public sector entity. But I guess, Sarah mentioned a little bit ago that there is some flexibility around distribution of the licenses. So I think if you want to try to contact us directly around the specific circumstances of under which you're trying to deploy the licenses, there may be an opportunity for you to get additional licenses, even if you're not a public sector entity.
And I think there's one question on the planning side. If a workforce board doesn't currently have a good connection or awareness of the IT landscape in their area, would this be a more appropriate opportunity than the implementation grant? I think the best way to look at the planning grant is to look at it as truly an opportunity to explore and create a strategy for developing these IT career pathways in your local area and what makes sense as a viable career pathway. It will be an opportunity for you to not only name a hypothesis, but also being able to test it and what works, what doesn't work, and what are all of the internal and external supports that you need to make this successful. I think it's an interesting piece to note that it's really an exploration exercise versus having specific outcomes and KPIs that you need to hold your participants to.
I see one question that came in through the chat. Says, are there opportunities to upskill existing candidates? Could this be an opportunity for people that are already employed? Yes, definitely. I think a fair number of folks who were engaged in the Google Career Certs in previous projects, they were working already and worked to complete the certificates part-time. That's definitely a possibility if folks are looking to change careers or upskill within the IT industry. This is a great opportunity for them to do that. So yes, definitely a person does not need to be unemployed to be eligible to participate by any means.
I'm not seeing any new questions, but we do have a few more minutes. So if folks have any lingering thoughts or questions they want to pop in to the Easy Retro board. We're happy to answer them. These have been really great and clarifying. I hope they've been helpful for folks on the call. Well, if there's nothing else top of mind, I'll just close us out by reminding us that we will be sharing the recording of this webinar to everybody who registered, and we'll also be including links to the RFP so you can take the next step there. But most importantly, to express your interest on the interest form by the end of the day tomorrow.
Brittany, there was a question that just came in around whether there's a deadline to apply for the license distribution.
Yes, the deadline for that will be June 10th, I believe, the same as the planning grant deadline. And yes, Brandon, we will have the slides available as well. All right, if there are no other questions, are there any last thoughts from my colleagues before we close out?
I don't think so. I just encourage anybody, if you have questions that come to you after we jump off today. The contact information for either myself or Jonathan Osei for the Workforce Development Board pilot are available, I think, within the RFP that's on the website. So don't hesitate to reach out with any questions that you might have.
Yep, exactly. I just want to echo Veronica sentiment. Thank you everyone for joining us today for the information session. Again, just keep in mind the deadlines and the dates, and especially if you want to chat with someone from JFF one-on-one, be sure to sign up for a time on June 6th and June 7th. And we're really looking forward to taking a look at these applications and getting this program started. So thank you.
Oh, and I will shout out one quick reminder again about the Google and IBM info sessions next week. IBM is on the 1st, Google is on the 2nd at 11 a.m. And just check that webpage to find the dial-in information. I should have that updated within the next 24 hours.
Excellent. Thank you all so much for joining. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we hope to read your applications very soon. Bye now.
Thanks, Brittany. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.